we all have to just be aware that this is a very dangerous time. It's not the time to be a cowboy and going all in on any one thing. You got to be careful. One of the things that I've been talking about a little bit is that this is the first cycle in Bitcoin, bear cycle, where you have high inflation, right? So starting in 2009, that's when it started. We didn't have high inflation, and this is the first period we do. And then also this is the first period where the Federal Reserve has actually stopped printing and is kind of reversing the printing press, is trying to suck money out. You just have to be a little careful here because it's really uncharted territory for cryptocurrencies as a whole. I love long-term crypto, at least the big players like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I do think that this is the .com moment for cryptocurrencies, and I don't think that maybe 5% of cryptos will survive this. But what that also tells me is we have to go lower because there's still way too many nonsense coins out there that really don't have a big use case. And it's actually a scary period because I do worry that this is uncharted territory, like you're saying, and it could spin us into something much, much worse later this decade. Because again, you get in this cycle of the Fed, when things get bad, politically, the Fed, we know, is not supposed to be political, but the bottom line is they're humans, they have hearts, they want to help people. So when they see people unemployed, and we know that's one of their mandates, they have to react. So if you start to see a recession and it gets to be a bad recession because of all the liquidity being sucked out and high inflation, if the Fed has to go back to printing of money, it just creates this cycle, and eventually that cycle does collapse. So you either get in Venezuelan type inflation, or you have to have this massive collapse and reset in the economy. And I do worry that the 100-year cycle of the 29 crash and the Great Depression is coming up. And I've said this before, but they always say that every generation has to experience something like that. And it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of those people that were in the Great Depression, there's not a lot of them left, unfortunately, to kind of remind us of the pitfalls. I still remember vividly my grandmother, they were relatively wealthy by the time they retired, but she still was into, so careful with money because she went through that period and remembered that period. And that's something just to kind of think about. And you have to wonder, this is where it gets really interesting, at least for me, as I'm trying to value altcoins, right? So you look at like a Cardano or a Polkadot or a Solana or an Avalanche, and you have to say, okay, well, if this was a company, what would it be valued at in the stock market based on its use case, right? And this is so hard to do, but again, would it be a multi-billion-dollar company, or would it be 100 million? It's so hard to value these coins. Again, that's one of the reasons why I'll trade the alts, but for the most part, man, when it comes to where I'm going to accumulate for a longer term hold, I got to stick with Bitcoin as my main holding, and then maybe a little bit of Ethereum in there. But it's just too hard to know the real valuations here. There's so many new investors that kind of came in with crypto, and crypto brought them in, the excitement of crypto. But I do hope that they understand some of these things, because I remember when I started investing in small caps, and that was my beginning, trying to make lots of money on a small amount of money, just like a lot of people do. And man, did I get hammered so many times just doing bad things and not really understanding. So people need to really understand what they're investing in. I'm still liking a short on oil here. I know that's the counter kind of, consensus thing out there, but I think that oil, to me, especially if the Fed's pushing us towards recession, it makes no sense that oil is going to go to 150 or 200, even with Russia's disruption and everything like that. So I'm in the camp that oil is near-term topping. I love the fact that the talking heads out there are so bullish. Everyone's saying, get in oil stocks. It's the safe place to be. And usually heck, they said that about Bitcoin at 65,000 with inflation coming. So just be aware of that. Go almost counter to what you're hearing, and you might